everybody. It's Chris Charlesworth. Next to me, I've got Keith Altham. So these gentlemen have kindly agreed to come down today and spend a bit of time with us and do a Q&A and answer your questions, but also to tell us some glory details of the move. So, firstly, we'll start off with Keith. Now, Keith, you were there back in the days, NME, when I Can't Explain was released.
Yeah, I was a music journalist for the 1964 to about 1969. I did a lot of interviews with the Who during that period. And following that, I became an independent press agent. Pete Townsend from the other day said, how would you like to be part of the Who? They were my favourite band. I said, absolutely. I spent 16 years as the Who's PR. One of the questions I think I was most often asked was, what was it like handling Keith Moon? You didn't handle Keith Moon. You bought him a brandy and hung for Green Death. Some of you will be aware, I'm sure, that today's a rather sad anniversary of Keith's death. I've written a few little notes, maybe I could read you just a short portion of one before we talk to Chris. This is my first ever interview with Keith Moon. My first experience of trying to interview Keith Moon in June '65 as an NME journalist should have alerted me to the problems that come as the Who's independent press agent in the 70s. For our first interview, he found a show at his local pub, Torch, just 200 yards from his home in Wembley, and phoned in to a smirking landlord who brought over a series of wild excuses to my table every hour on the hour. Mr. Moon presents his apologies, but his mother failed to wake him this morning. However, he has given her a sound thrashing and will be with you shortly. Another hour goes by. Over comes the landlord again. Mr. Moon is mortified, but begs to inform you his cat is now having a fit. And he's having to gaffer tape its jaws together and let it swallowing its own tongue. And he will be with you as soon as the vet gets there. He thinks the cat may have accidentally eaten one of his vitamin tablets. And finally, Keith Mama rang to say she was very sorry, but he just ran out the front door and he was due in Manchester with the band an hour ago. And asked him to read it to say he must have forgotten what it was he had and never would call and arrange it when he does. That was my first attempt on the
Thanks very much for having me. That was a pleasure to hear. Now the gentleman on my far left, once again I'm getting my left and right correct here for a change, which is your right but my left. Chris, now, you worked, for Melody Maker many, many moons ago, even though you look a spring chicken.
Well, compared to the man on my right here, indeed I was. I turned up, having managed to blag a staff job on Melody Maker in 1970, and like Keith here, The Who was my favourite band too, so suddenly I find myself not having to pay to go and see them, but to be paid to go and see them, which was actually really brilliant. And the first time I saw The Who as a writer on Melody Maker was at Dunstable Civic Hall in July, I think, 1970. And I went to review the show and I gave them a good review, of course, because I loved them to death. And the following week, the phone rang on my desk on Melody Maker. I picked it up and someone said, "Hello, is that Chris?" I said, "Yes." He says, "It's Keith here. Keith Moon. Keith Moon of The Who." Is there any other? I just want to tell you how much I enjoyed the review. It's really nice of you. Thank you very much. I said, "Well, I love The Who, Keith." He said, "So do I." The thing was, Keith was a proactive PR in his own right. The long-suffering professional PR here didn't really have a lot to do, because Keith took it on his head just to promote the band in any way he knew how. Now, I'd been on MM maybe 2 or 3 months by this time, but no other musician had rang me up to thank me for a review. And a lot of other musicians needed a good review much more than the Who did. So Keith just took it on himself to do that. Fantastic. Well, I already loved the Who, but that kind of attitude endeared them to me all the more.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Chris, you actually got involved in what I call the Bible. I call it the Bible, and I've actually heard other people calling it, which is Dear Boy.
Oh yeah. Again, this sad anniversary, it's probably appropriate to talk about this. 15 years ago today, we published, I should explain, after I left Melody Maker, I did various other things in the music industry, and I now run a company called Omnibus Press, which publishes rock and pop books. And one of the books we published, of course, is Dear Boy, The Life of Keith Moon by Tony Fletcher, which we published exactly 15 years ago today, which coincided with the 20th anniversary of Keith's going to the great gig in the sky. And it was a fantastic launch that we had at the Who convention at the Astoria. I don't know whether anybody here was there. Tony was there, and I brought 400 copies of Dear Boy along. I think we sold the whole fucking lot in one afternoon because no one had seen it before. But Tony and I had planned that book 4 years previously. He'd come to me and he proposed the idea of doing a really good book on Keith, and I was all for it. So he spent 4 years working on that book. And as you know, he interviewed about 130 people, including Kim, his late lamented wife, Annette, his girlfriend of the last 3 or 4 years of his life, and Dougal, who's here today, and loads of other people. And I think he produced one of the best Who books that's ever been written.
One of the best rock books ever written.
The Who always appealed to journalists like myself and Keith. There was something about them, there was something about Keith's lyrics, there was something about their attitude that endeared them to writers. And as a result, I think the Who have been particularly well served when it comes to books and literature. I think book for book, there's more good books about the Who on a ratio than there is to any other group, with the possible exception of Bob Dylan. But I think Dear Boy is right up there with them. And Tony, my author, did a fabulous job there. I might add also, and I'm not bragging here, it's done fabulously well. We've sold about 75,000 copies of that book in the United Kingdom alone. Now, for a non-fiction book, that's fantastic. Most politicians' memoirs, they bottom out at 10,000. Even Thatcher didn't do as well as Keith, which I think is really fantastic. Poor David Blunkett, poor man, the Sheffield guy, he sold about 4,000 copies of it. And Keith sold 75. That's in the UK alone. I didn't have the American rights to that book, another company had the US rights, so I think they've done double that there. And we've also got a German edition in the German language, and that's sold about another 10. So if you top them all together, we're way somewhere around 250,000 books worldwide.
Wow.
So that's Keith for you. I think this book, it's been read now and bought now by people who were probably not alive when Keith was, let alone when my generation was here. And it's just word of mouth that's selling it. And people tell their friends, God, you've got to read this book about this crazy guy. But I think, if you don't mind me waffling on a bit here, it's wrong to just remember Keith as a crazy madman. There's a guy there with a Dear Boy t-shirt, I love it. I should have put my own on today, shouldn't I? He was, of course, the most instinctive drummer the world has ever known. And he should be remembered just as much as a drummer as being a madman, I think. So let's not forget what a huge contribution he made to the Who's records and to their live shows.
Is there any memory that, as soon as someone mentions Keith Moon or Moon, or, any of these things, is there an instant memory that comes to your head that you think of that, past back?
Well, I'm going to have to take you back to how I didn't interview Keith Moon again, because it goes on this way. After the Moon had failed to materialise on time for his next interview in Garrett Street with me the following year, he rang a literal excuse on the phone to explain he was mortified to have missed me again, but was crossing Piccadilly Circus when a number 15 bus hit him and broke his right leg. However, he'd been to St Bart's Hospital and now his leg was fully set. He attempted to hobble round on crutches to see me at my office. I fell for it and told him to stay put and raced off to his nearby management offices in Old Colchester Street. As I turned the corner of Frith Street, I sighted the grotesque spectacle of our demon drummer on crutches with his leg in plaster, swinging along the pavement and attempting to cross the busy road in front of me. A large truck screeched to a halt which almost ran him over. I crossed the road and remonstrated with the driver in his cab, whilst the accident lay collapsed in the gutter as though struck by lightning. Could you not see he was on crutches, I said? You should be more careful. The driver's face was a picture as he gaped over my shoulder to witness Keith Moon sitting on the curb, dumping the brooms which had served as fake crutches, unwinding the bandages and the phony wooden splints from his leg. The driver failed to see the funny side of it and drove off after delivering a volley of abuse. He made a third attempt to meet up and do the interview 3 days later. This time I arranged to meet him at a really steady go TV show in Canteen, where the technicians and rock stars mingled during breaks. He stalked in late again without a word, carrying an old white plastic sports bag, from which he produced a short-handled axe and smashed it down on the table between us. What's that for, I said? That's for Roger. The actor. You haven't seen him, have you? Later in the early 70s, I became the Who's publicist for 16 years. The movie was both a dream and a delight to look after. And a nightmare. We began very pressed up with gaining more notoriety, but there was never a guarantee he would turn up. In turn, he was unpredictable, lovable, aggravating, frustrating, frightening, comic, maddening, versatile, violent, manic, demented, and hugely amusing. Why was Keith Moon so manically driven? He craved attention. He would do anything to be loved, except be still or behave. But there was also a sentimental and compassionate side to Moon's nature, which he exercised when friends like Liv Stanship were Bonzo Dodgers here and confined with clinical depression in the private clinic in Roehampton. One memorable late summer's afternoon, he decided to cheer them up by arriving at the clinic to take him out for a picnic, but typically arrived too late at 4 p.m. for them to drive out when his blacked out Rolls Royce into the country. It's very sweet of you, dear boy, but they're too late. I must be back for lock-up at 6 o'clock, declared Viv, sadly surveying massive umbrellas, tents, balloons, champagne, and camping. Moon crammed in the back of his Rolls. Nonsense, declared Moon. I know the very spot, not 10 minutes from here. With that, I drove round through Bar, straight into the middle of the Hammersmith traffic island beneath the flyover, where Moon decapped his driver duty, and they soon had a scout tent erected, a blazing campfire, burning champagne, and tin lights, sausages sizzling. Until that is, the police inevitably arrived to sort out the huge traffic jams that happy campers have attracted round the roundabout to view this bizarre spectacle. I officially declare myself no longer clinically depressed, quote Viv grinning at the Hammersmith police station later, when I arrived to help bail them out. When in doubt, call the press station.
Fantastic. Got one more question for Chris. Now, the Who box set, 25 years maximum R&B. You again got involved in this, didn't you?
That's right, yeah. This was about 92, 93. What happened there was, I have to say that after Keith died, I lost touch with the Who a bit. I was very much quite close to the Who anyway, between up to in the 70s when I was on Melody Maker. I saw them about 30, 35 times during that peak period, which is something that's fantastic to see them so often. And because I got to know them, I was backstage a lot and hanging out with them, and I was never, really part of the entourage, but I was privy to a lot of things that maybe most journalists didn't see. Certainly I wouldn't have seen with Led Zeppelin. I'd have been kicked out like that, but the Who were always very open, so I was quite close to them up to the time Keith died. And at that time I lived in New York because I took over Melody Maker's American office. I was running that. And then I stayed in England. I didn't come back when they did the tour immediately after Keith died. So I sort of lost touch with them a bit. I saw them once with Kenny Jones, I think, at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. I was there, and I'd taken my girlfriend at the time then, and she said, "You're always raving about the Who. You must take me to see them." I don't know. I didn't think they were anywhere near as good actually as they used to be with Keith, but she raved about them. I thought, you don't know what you missed, darling, you really don't. Anyway, and then I saw Live Aid, and I thought, oh dear, what a disappointment that was. And I saw that Brits appearance, and then I went to see them at Wembley when there was about, I don't know, 15 people on stage, if you remember those shows. And they did Tommy, and Pete was in a suit with a plastic sort of sheeting around. And I quite enjoyed that, and I thought, well, they're restructuring the Who, they're redoing it, so it kind of rekindled my enthusiasm. And a year or so after that, I was at the Virgin Megastore, and I saw all these box sets of all these bands, but there wasn't a Who one. And I got pissed off. I thought, well, back on me, half these bands, I don't have the right to clean the Who's shoes, you know, box sets out here. So what's going on? So a day or two later, I actually wrote a letter to Pete. I said, "Dear Pete," and I was very bold in this letter. I said, how the fuck do Who haven't got their own box set? I was at the Virgin Megastore there, and I saw bloody Journey have got a box set. Doesn't anybody care anymore? You know, surely the time's right for, you know, we were well into the CD era and that, but surely someone should do this. How the fuck's no one's done it? And I said, I'll put my, if you want a bit of, you know, impetus, a bit of help, I'll put myself forward to get the ball rolling somehow, you know. Anyway, blow me down, Pete rang me up the next day at home. And I wasn't home, my wife Lisa was at home, and she picked up the phone. She never spoke to a rock star in her life. I was at work at Omnibus Press, and she said, "Hello, Pete." "Oh my God, Pete, oh, Chris." Yeah. And then Pete called me at work, and he said, "Look, let's have a meeting to discuss it." And that's how the whole thing started. This would have been about 92. So the next thing was I had a meeting with Pete and Bill Kirbishley, and with Richard Evans, who's you know, go-to designer. And slowly but surely we put the whole thing together, and about 3 years later out it came. You know, 30 years of maximum R&B. There were some funny things happened while I was putting it together. One of the funniest was that, I guess a lot of you here have got this, and you know how disc one, side one starts with Pete saying, "Heck, not a fucker rocker, I'm gonna fucking do not a fucker." Well, I got that from a bootleg from Los Angeles, I think, Long Beach Arena, that's it. And it was lent to me by Russ Halfin, the photographer. And I heard this, I thought, that's perfect to start the set. It was absolutely perfect to do it with. And so I got this, I gave it to, the other person that was involved was John Astley, of course. John at the time was Pete's brother-in-law, Karen's wife. Karen's brother. And so we put this on the front, I played it to Pete, and he said, "Why'd you put that on for? It makes me sound like a run down Las Vegas." And I said, "Exactly, Pete." Exactly, you're a loud bastard. And so I managed to persuade him to do that. But what I didn't manage to persuade him, I wanted a 5th CD of the live Tommy from Leeds as like a bonus in that. And for some reason or other, Polygram, they wouldn't spring for this.
What about a next box set? When's that due out?
Well, ultimately, of course, it came out in the deluxe live Leeds, of course. Maybe they were just holding it back, but I thought that it would be so good to have a 5th CD of a complete live Tommy, and that would have given us a bit more room for more quadrophenia. Sufficient quadrophenia, and one or two other things. All I'd have put would have been the single of Pinball, I think, on the 4 CDs. But anyway, that's how it came together. And then after that, I got involved in what you might call restructuring the rest of the back catalogue on upgraded CDs with nice booklets and bonus tracks.
Were you involved with Live at Hull as well? Were you involved with Live at Hull?
Not really, no. The sort of deluxe ones I've retired by. But I don't know whether any, but the first ever CDs, the first ever CD records of the Who were really poor, I thought. There was absolutely no information on them. The mastering was bad, but I think they'd just taken them off the vinyl and copied it. It wasn't very good at all. But I could see there was room for a lot of improvement there, so I I kind of, well, I was really behind them to do that. Because the other thing we had trouble with was Shell told me, because we couldn't get the master tapes for all the recordings from my generation album, or my generation anywhere and how to wear, or I can't explain, which is why they don't sound as good on the box set as they do on the ultimate deluxe My Generation set. But there was a lot of bitching going on between the Who and Shell told me at the time, as there has been forever. I learned a lot about the Who that I didn't know when I was doing the box set, and I learned also about their rather chronic financial situation with regard to the royalties that they should have earned but had to give away to Shell told me, which I'm sure Keith knows about as well. I don't think it's any secret now that after Substitute came out, there was a court case, they were obliged to give away a large percentage to Tolmie right the way up to Who's Next. And so, even though Tolmie didn't lift a finger in terms of working for the Who from pre-Substitute onwards, he earned a huge amount of money. He became a very wealthy man. In fact, he earned more than Pete, Roger, Keith and John did from those recordings that they did. And this is one of the reasons why they became such a great live band, because they were obliged to play live as often as they could, anywhere they could, to make money. And consequently, this massive amount of gigs that they played, and believe me, they played more gigs in 1955 than 1966, than Led Zeppelin did in their whole career. And that's how they became as good as they did. Anyway, I'm waffling on now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Just a little bit of...
Guys, just keep the noise down a little bit at the back so everyone can hear. Appreciate that. We'll move back over to Keith again. I think you've got something else to tell us.
Well, I've just got one outstanding example of what goes wrong with the publicity stunt you've got Keith moving on. An outstanding example, a simple publicity stunt that I staged, which escalated into a Third World War, occurred when I arranged for Keith Moon and the late actor Oliver Reed to crowd up and use the word.
Yeah.
And spread it about, they were about to start together with Bill and Tommy. I arranged a photo shoot with them in which they both be dressed as traditional clowns for some colour. The Crown Prince of Rock meets the Crown Prince of the Moons. Moon was in a traditional court jester, crowned by a tricornered hat and bells, whilst Oliver became a mock Charlie Chaplin with an artificial flower growing through his bowler hat, a red nose and big boots. Both costumes were antiques from Burnham's theatrical agency in London and insured for a great deal of money. I made the hideous mistake of warning them about this prior to the grounds of Oliver's lake house in Surrey. Do not damage the costumes. They are priceless. Were my famous last words. With brandy and champagne already in hand and a warning glimpse of the conspiracy already in their eyes, we trudged with some tribulation to reach the vast garden lake and the top national newspaper photographer in our wake. The odd couple climbed laboriously into a small boat and announced their intentions to row in full costume to a small island in the middle where they would partake of more medicine. I remonstrated to no avail as they rowed off and the photographer clicked the cabin away. Great, a couple of maniacs have used our happy snap. Lift the gold drinking goblets for the lads. They go down a sight around the island away from us on the jetty. Those sounds which travel beautifully over the water could be clearly heard. Right, you ingrate, came Oliver's perfectly modulated but inebriate public schoolboy tones. I had quite enough of you sitting back there whilst I'm doing all the rowing like Lord and Muck. Get out and swim, you grubby little rock and roll swine. There was a sound of a scuffle and a splash. You could see nothing. And the boat reappeared round the island with just Reed in it. I now have my head in my hands and I'm already counting the cost of ruined costumes and an explanation of burns. We shall leave that disgusting little worm to consider his unpardonable bad manners and repair to the house with more libations. Perhaps really grandly on his low arrival back at the giant jetty. Fantastic gibbers the photographer hopping about with roll effects fucking away like a giant locust. One more shot to call it, Oliver. Great shot, great shot. on a grotesque parody of Chaplin with a large false nose lifts a mocking mug of wine and sneers obligingly. I now sense impending doom. We repair to the house for more medicine, and after a suitable period in which the maroon river is supposed to be contemplating his poor form, we return to the jetty where Reed graciously agrees to rescue him, and rows off outside behind the bar into the middle of the lake. There is a shade of faint outrage from the deserted moon, and we hear that we won't see him giving his best Long John Silver across the water as he apparently boards Reed's rowboat. Avast there, ye lovely, don't ye ever try that again on me, you fat, dark and bloke, you ought to have it. Comes Keith's voice across the water, followed by another splash and a smack. The little boat then reappears round the island with our three-case rock and roll loom, now draped with pondweed, frostball and lakeside silk, dripping down his totally ruined costume and makeup. The press photographer's now silenced with glee. I am less happy. Great goes the photographer, hopping up and down on the lakeside, getting shots of them looking like a drowned rat in a cap and bells. I resigned myself to the back of me, and now in full moon ago, I'm heading for disaster. The scenario is repeated back to his house, native of the rescue of Oliver, after which we traipsed back, following two sodden clouds with grease paint running down their faces from ruined costumes. They are deliriously happy with themselves. I think that went rather well, that said sorry, exceedingly agreeable. More medicine, says Reed? Of course, and then squelched back to his house. So overwhelmed are we, or so overwhelmed were Oliver and Keith, that I showed this morning that they announced they were now encore and reenact the sword fight scene from Errol Flynn's famous duel with the early film of Robin Hood. Moon is to play the sheriff of Nottingham and Reed will play the Green Man, but with genuine broadswords which are hung on the staircase back at the house. At the point when they begin beating each other about the head with these massive two-handed swords, up and down Reed's spiral staircase with careless, drunken abandon, I prepare to evacuate. You're a very lucky photographer, puffs Reed, aiming huge stripes at Reed's head, as if he had decapitated him out of great contact. He rose further than this, rejoins Moon. Moon tried to amputate Reed's legs with a similar spiraling motion, and the sword almost as big as himself. The following morning I read the photographer was home to the body count I left. One of the most memorable days of my life, whispers the photographer hoarsely, still suffering from too much medicine. I left them in the pub, the cricketers not there. The Moon had taken all his clothes off and was standing naked against the punters in the saloon bar. When the pub landlord asked him why Sir had removed his clothes, he said, because Sir is wet. Reed then showed him how to leave the pub in style, driving himself off in the boot, and climbing out and up the chimney, in which there was a blazing log fire. This is apparently one of his regular party tricks in the pub. How about the photos for the use of the World Colour Supplement? I asked nervously. I'm afraid the only ones I got were the first 2 or 3 rolls before the fun really started, said the photographer. What fun? I asked. They pushed me in the goldfish pond with a fountain, and all my cameras and film were in my pockets. Still, they were very apologetic about it, said you would sort out the bill for my clothes and cameras.
I'm sure everybody else does, but we are running out of time. So what I'm actually going to do is just, get one of you to ask each of these gentlemen a question. As I say, we are running out of time. We've actually got another 5 minutes. So, questions for Keith? Yes, sir.
What was the real story about Keith, the car, and the swimming pool? Did it happen? In your opinion?
Well, I wasn't there. Are you talking about Flint Mitchell, or are you talking about the one where he reversed the Rolls Royce and it was late?
Yeah. Did any of them actually happen, or was it just Keith making it up?
There were 2 stories. The one where he allegedly attempted to commit suicide.
Yeah.
So the way it tells me later was that he managed to try and commit suicide with his Rolls Royce by reversing it into the lake, where it got stuck in the mud, so it never went all the way into the lake. The other one was the famous episode of Flint Michigan, where he celebrated his 21st birthday party and it was alleged that cars found themselves on the bottom of the swimming pool. We think that was actually somewhat reduced. It appeared to be a couple of dune buggies that had been pushed into the pool. But it was certainly very expensive for the hoover because it cost a huge amount of money, repairs to ruined chalets and the pool where the food fight ensued. It was pretty much, and then Moon hired a private jet as the others had flown on to the gig, left him behind. So he was wandering around the airport trying to sell tickets to other people who wanted to go in the same direction as him. So there is some truth in all these things, but they become exaggerated.
Yeah.
I did see a TV bite the dust once though.
Yeah.
This was in Charlotte, South Carolina, October 71 was this, and after the show, most people had gone back to the hotel, and it was a holiday inn it was, and we were in the bar, and then eventually Roger went off with the most attractive girl in the room, as he almost invariably did. Pete went off to read and muse on his Indian guru. John disappeared to practice. He was the only movement that ever did practice it. And a few of us went up to Keith's room. Some of the road crew, one or two intrepid girls that were brave enough to do so, maybe the odd fan. And someone switched the telly on, and the telly was on the table by the window, and other people were where Keith was. The wrong place to put it. Keith was by the bed drinking away, but we've got some champagne up there and whatever. And Keith was telling a joke and being very noisy, as he generally was. And the people that were watching the telly made a tragic error. They turned around and shh, we're watching the TV. So he walks up to where this table is, and he just rents it off the table and lobs it out the window. We're about 8 stories up, for fuck's sake. Right? And then he just wanders back to where we were. And as I was saying, you know, and of course it's, you know, tick, 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 tick before the knock on the door, and it's that sort of night porter guy going, what's going on, you know? And Keith is so fucking funny. He says, a terrible accident, he says. You won't believe what happened, sir. You won't believe. I was trying to move the television to put it closer to the bed so that my guests and I could watch it all together, because it wasn't really very satisfactorily located. And I lifted it up and I accidentally slipped on some soap which was on the floor, and I tripped and it fell through the window. My God, what a terrible thing to happen. I hope no one was down below. It was a terrible accident, absolutely dreadful accident. I'm so sorry, I can't apologise enough. And I've got to go, I said, well, he's going to get away with this, he's going to get away with it. I'm so sorry, I'll pay for it. How much is it? Well, where's shortly why? Well, where's some money? We'll give him some money. Anyway, we managed to persuade him that it was an accident. And then the guy says, well, I've got to repair the window. I've got to come back with some cardboard or some wood to put on the window. And he said, well, if you're going downstairs, he said, if you're going downstairs, perhaps when you return, you could bring another 2 bottles of champagne. And then, he said, and then, did it not? He said, and another television.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, guys. So I personally really enjoyed that. I would really like to thank both of you for coming down today and taking your time out. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure everybody else.